Hello, welcome back. Nikki Does here. Today is a computer-y focused Nikki Does, not so much a tear something apart or fix it or explore it. So I've got my Nikki Does style slide up here with the Odoo amazing deployment. So this is going to be about Odoo, and it's not really a video on what Odoo is and what it's not, but I'll give you hopefully this will stay short. But it's mostly about deploying Odoo for a small environment in an amazing way from we're using a tool called Doodba, which was built by Tecnativa, a Spanish consultancy that has been doing amazing things for Odoo's community. So I guess a couple things. The first thing is Odoo is available in a community edition, and it's also in an enterprise edition. The enterprise edition, you can go to odoo.com and you can use their cloud hosted version, and it's really inexpensive to get started for sure. Be mindful that it does get more expensive as you scale it up. So if you are going to run a business that's maybe not going to be throwing off a ton of cash, you may want to be careful about starting with the enterprise version and avoid the pitfall of the subscription snowball as you get bigger and bigger. Now, if your business is making money, I have to say, Odoo, they've been around for a long time, and it used to be called OpenERP, ERP for Enterprise Resource Planning, or Enterprise Requirements Planning, or there's all sorts of little tweaks of the acronyms. But Odoo is a business framework, so it is going to give you some pre-built modules, and you can build your own modules, and you can acquire modules from third parties, and you can acquire modules from the Odoo Community Association, which are free. And you build this whole thing up to run your business. And that means some customer management things, some orders and shipping things, and a website with a portal so your customers can sign in and see where their orders are or look at their past orders, shopping cart type functionality. There's even a module in the standard Odoo and community version that would allow all your employees to enter restaurants that they use in the area and coordinate on ordering lunch. So it's a framework where you can build screens, database, printed reports, viewable reports, all this stuff. You can kind of put all those together without going into Python or C++. Well, you do go into Python without just going straight into some sort of language and writing your own from scratch. It's a really good framework for all that stuff. So as you can imagine, it's not for the faint of heart to get started. This isn't something that you would drop in today, and by the end of the day, you've got this great Odoo thing running, and you can put your products in and start placing orders and so on. It's possible, it's unrealistic to do that. If you want to see a demo of it, and I've implemented lots of ERP systems in my life for my companies and for companies that I worked for before starting my own companies. ERP implementation and the presentations for them are necessarily BS. They have to be. I'm not picking on Odoo or anybody. It's just what it has to be. So if you watch their presentations, they make it look really, really easy, but you can expect it to be really, really difficult. It is a shallow learning curve, and you'll see later that means it's a hard learning curve. It's long and it takes a lot of effort. So do not delude yourself in any way that installing any kind of ERP or business operating system, business management system is going to be easy. They are hard. So let's see how much time have I not been on that? Under 5 minutes. My preaching is about done, at least for now. So hopefully you've got a good sense of that, and I welcome you to comment away on this video, and if you disagree with me or if you have a story that's fairly similar. So let's get into it. The main point of this is going to be the Doodba or Docker Odoo base, I think is what that stands for, or Docker Odoo deployment base, something like that. Doodba is written and so forth by the consultancy in Spain called Tecnativa, and they are prolific proponents of the Odoo Community Association, which I have not put here. So here's Tecnativa, here's their website, and oh look, their GitHub comes up right up on top. So Tecnativa is, as I said, a Spanish consultancy. They are fluent in English, so I haven't translated their website, but and then we also have what was I just going to mention? Odoo Community Association. Let's see if we can find that quickly. There's Odoo Community Association. So Odoo Community Association has a web page, but really what OCA is a Git repository. So if I look at GitHub OCA, they have a monstrous, just amazingly large, 236 at current count, amazingly large set of repositories with each of these repos has underneath it a further amazing number of individual modules within it. So in here, look at all these modules that are in it. And let's see if this one's got a good help. And it does. It's got the add-on kind of summary here. So all of these modules that you can add on, let's see if we find any creating invoice automatically on a daily basis. How cool would that be, right? If your company is shipping stuff, you should probably be invoicing it. So oodles and oodles of modules at the OCA, or Odoo Community Association. These are not all written by Tecnativa, and be aware there's no H in Tecnativa, so for American US spellers, Tecnativa. And be aware they're not all written by Tecnativa. There are a number of other amazing consultancies out there that are contributing to these both open source and closed sourced modules. The OCA, these are all open sourced, of course. This is all public. So the problem usually comes in when you have to integrate them in. There may be some questions and some difficulties. One other caution is that if you look at the OCA modules, let's see if we can get back to that. This one. There's some really amazing things in here. So much that it's a fire hose. There is something called RunBot, which I'm not quickly finding, but if you look at some of these modules, so they're all going to be listed here, and I believe there's a way in here to test it out. So the important thing, the pitfall would be that not all these modules are available for not all Odoo versions. So Odoo is currently on version 17, and you can see that this Brazilian localization contract module is only for 12 and 14. So if you wanted to use that and you were implementing version 17 or 16, you would have to go out on your own and bring this module up to be compatible with version 16 or 17. So here's product order, no name, no idea what it does, but you can see it's available for 15, 14, 13, 12. Again, not 17 or 16. So when you're implementing Odoo, you would want to be careful about what version of Odoo you implement. The latest is not necessarily the best for you. Okay, let's get back to my untitled presentation here. So Doodba, let's start with what it is. Doodba allows a guided creation of your own Odoo project. So if you want to deploy Odoo on your local machine, you don't really need Doodba. You can clone the repository from Odoo, modify a configuration file or two, run it on localhost, start the containers. You need things like Docker to do that for the most part. Start it on your localhost URL, and before you know it, you'll have an Odoo screen up and running. And that's, of course, really cool. And I think we're going to show that. We're going to do that live. I love a challenge, so we're going to see if my Doodba implementation is close enough. And I'll show you the Odoo screen. So guided creation of your own Odoo project. If you want to deploy Odoo in a real way, meaning you're going to put the add-ons in, the extra modules, and meaning you are going to deploy it somewhere where it's going to be internet publicly internet facing, so the public can sign into see your Odoo pages, your website, and create an account and order and check their status and all that kind of stuff. Then you're going to want to use something like Doodba. It consists of a template to help you answer questions, and those templates get you remarkably far. So you answer some questions, and there's a scripting system. It's called Copier, and the scripting system called Copier takes your answers and custom configures a deployment environment for you. And that's more than it just deploys it. That means it actually creates a Git project and some container instances that you can deploy wherever you need. So you'd start out, typical workflow, you'd create this project, your own Doodba project. You can run it localhost on your machine as a developer. Then you can upscale that immediately to do some QA and testing on it on another level of deployment, a different environment. And that means it would get installed in some remote server or wherever you want. And then you'll have a production version also, which will all use your same core stuff. But when you change the environment from, say, developer to testing to production, the way Odoo, these containers work are very different. So for example, in the developer version, there's going to be debugging, there's going to be a mail catching system, so you don't have to go, when you do password resets and things, they don't actually go out to the internet and mail back to you. They're going to use MailHog to intercept that and have a localized mail server, a little private mail server, where you can do your password resets and check your emails and make sure your customer notifications emails aren't ridiculous and you don't mistakenly start sending emails out to your live customers or whoever you do. So it tailors those environments, and you can go back and forth from production back to development, and all of the core parts stay common and consistent. So you don't have to maintain 3 separate environments, and you don't have to maintain one environment and continually add and remove these developer level features. So really a smart and awesome tool. My job here is to help you understand how it works a little better. I am just going through it, and I learned a few things. This would have been great for the start of the video, right? I'm going through it, and I learned a few things, and I wanted to share those because they were difficult for me, and I thought if I can help get you over a couple of those humps with a we're at 12 minutes, so less than a huge video. Okay, continuing on, back onto the main topic. What is Doodba? Guided creation of your own project using a templating system. When the project is done, you end up with these well-tailored environments that I mentioned, the development, the testing, and the production. It is opinionated, which for those of you who don't know how that applies to software development, that means the authors tightly tied this to tools that they prefer, that they know and they like. So if you're not interested in using Linux at all, you're not going to be doing this. If you're not interested in using Visual Studio Code, probably this isn't for you. If you don't like Docker, probably not for you. If you don't like Git, absolutely not for you. And we'll see what some of those are. Do you need this, right? You've burned 15 minutes of your life watching me talk right now. And do you need to then take even more time to go into this, or can you just jump straight into Odoo? Again, I've been doing things with Odoo since I think version 8, which would probably put it at 2012 or so, something like that. So, golly, that's over 10 years. Do you seriously want to develop and deploy and implement Odoo? No, you don't need to do that. If you're just developing, deployment, implementing, no. If you're rolling it out, you can develop, deploy, implement just for yourself. This is not right. If you're doing this just for developing, this is such a mistake. If you're just playing around, no, you don't. So let's disregard that. Just playing around. Just so you don't think I'm as crazy as I really am. What I meant by just the original sentence was, if you're developing it yourself, if you're just kind of playing around and you're going to develop and deploy your own little instance, no, you don't need it. If you're rolling it out to a small organization, you've got 5 employees, or you're a nonprofit, or you just want to do a few things with Odoo, this is a great thing for you, especially if you like to learn and you like to keep your fingers in the pie, if you like to keep your hands involved with the development, then absolutely. If you're deploying Odoo for a mid-sized, meaning over, let's just say that's over 30 people, or a large organization, you've got a few million euro, a few $1 million that you're spending, absolutely not. Just hire the consulting firm. Hire Tecnativa, hire ACS1, hire, I don't know, if you're in the US, I've forgotten their name now, there's a really good one with long-standing employees who are brilliant and geniuses in doing this, and they will save you tons of money and tons of mistakes. So if you're just playing around because you want to go to your organization and say, hey, I do think we should use Odoo. If you're just playing around like that, either use the hosted version on Odoo. You can use, I think there's some trials there, and certainly even a 1-year subscription for one person is like $250 or something like that. Even if it's $500, if you're a mid to large organization, absolutely start something like that just to even play around. Well worth it. Don't do Doodba. But if you're looking to roll this out for your small organization, or you're looking to learn how all this stuff works, this is the thing for you. By no means, with no hesitation. So what does it do? I briefly mentioned this before. It's going to ask you a number of questions through a copier template, and the copier template uses the Jinja templating language. It is going to create a custom Git project and some custom Docker images and containers. It's then going to wrap those custom Git projects and containers with some invoke tasks. So think of invoke as the command line to run Doodba, and I actually am playing around with the idea of aliasing invoke, to say Doodba instead. So if you say Doodba start, it starts your task. But invoke is a common Python common task system, and we'll get into a little bit of detail on that. It also builds a Visual Studio Code workspace for you, which is awesome. It basically configures up a Visual Studio instance for you. So when you open that workspace config, your workspace works just like you're a great Odoo developer, including some fast buttons that I think we'll see on the bottom of Visual Studio Code. And it also integrates some debugging tools that are really great, because a huge problem with developing Odoo is debugging. If you don't have your debuggers set up, you could just pound your head against the wall for the simplest and dumbest of bugs, because they'll bring down your entire Odoo system. Like, it won't start. And then you're without visibility into what's going wrong. What good is it? You're basically blindly trying to solve the problem. So you need to see all the messages that are coming out and what's going on with your system. And it does a lot more. So let's see the last slide here. What do you need to know? You certainly need to know some Python. Odoo's written in Python. It is Python, it is XML, it's some JavaScript, and probably a few other things that are in there, some templating stuff, and but you definitely need to know pretty good at Python. You need to be familiar with Visual Studio Code. Doodba is very tightly tied to VS Code. For me, I run a Windows machine, and I run Windows subsystem for Linux 2, which is the current, and I think there's no reason to use WSL 1 or the first one. So let's just ignore that, and you need to know WSL. I have an Ubuntu instance. That's what you're going to see for me. You need to be quite familiar with Get. That includes slightly more advanced concepts like Get submodules, probably rebasing your code. Remember, Odoo is its own Get repo, and you're going to have your own repo with Odoo in it, and that's going to pull from the kind of the parent, the remote, and then you're going to have all of these other submodules, which are going to be their own repositories or their own projects, and you're not going to want to just bring in the code. You want to keep them tied to the project, so as the project updates, you get the benefit of those updates. So there's lots of Get wrangling and hijinks that go on with Doodba for sure, and sort of with Odoo also. And then the last thing I've listed on this list, which is just an abbreviated list, is you need to understand Docker containers, at least how they work to get something started. And you have to understand not just containers, but, and Docker Compose. So I'm using Docker Desktop here. You can absolutely use Docker Engine just the same, but I use Docker Desktop because I have Docker installed on my Windows level of my computer, and then I also have that translates through to Docker within your WSL2 environment, and we'll see that too. The last thing is I've got my little preachy bit here, my next preachy bit, which we got quite a few minutes in without me preaching again, so that's good. We have a steep learning curve. That is not really what's going on. A steep learning curve means that it's really hard for a little while, but after a while, it just, you get much, it's not true here. It's hard for a while and then it stays really hard. This not what this is. This is, you're going to start, it's going to be difficult for quite a while, but it will get easier as you get more familiar with the concept. So probably a pretty terrible explanation of my issue with steep learning curve. I'll get off the soapbox and stay on a topic that I'm much more familiar with. So let's see here. We talked a little bit about Tecnativa. Doodba is really two pieces. The first, this was all, took me a while to really figure out. So Doodba is this Docker Odoo base, and Doodba is not really the project you need. That is the framing system for the template. What you really need is the Doodba copier template. So if you think of Doodba as the application that runs the copier template, that is what it is. And so you don't need to clone this in any way whatsoever unless you want to fix it, adjust it, change it, fork it, and make it your own. You do not need to do anything really with Doodba. What you need to do, and you'll see here I've forked it to Doodba copier template on my version. So I've even highlighted that. It's just a direct fork from their copier template. I'm playing around with the readmes in there because I think we can, maybe as a community, so I would appreciate anyone's help, kind of beef up this documentation. In all fairness to Tecnativa and the kind and brilliant folks who wrote this, their job wasn't to document the hell out of the tool they used internally. Thank you immensely to them for sharing the tool and making it public with basically no license at all. It's a Boost software license, so you really just have to include this. You need to include this, which means you got to keep it under the Boost license. Whoops. So thank you to them for making this fully open source and not doing some nonsense with the license on that. So the Doodba copier template is the thing that's going to actually run you through. We're not going to go through that in this video. This is, again, already 23 minutes, and I wanted to keep it fairly short and fairly introductory. So let's take a look at what this gets you if you have this Doodba copier template. Maybe we'll be able to go through it. Let's just take a look at what it gets you. For that, I'm going to switch over to Visual Studio Code. And let's see if I've got the right one here. Yeah. So again, I'm running in Windows, and I've got my remote debugging set up for WSL, and my WSL instance is Ubuntu. I think it's 24, so might not be. 22, jammy. All right, so I am currently in the business software -Odoo. Yes, I like the BS Odoo. That makes me laugh. So let's see what we can do here. I talked about invoke. So let's start with the invoke. I want to actually run Odoo. So invoke list is basically the command line interface, or invoke is the command line interface for Doodba. So once you get this installation running, so here are some tasks that are all defined, by the way, in the tasks.py file. These tasks after update, closed, PRs, develop, and so on are all defined in this tasks.py file. You can see in here there's one called start, there's one called stop, there's one called test, there's one called develop, which sets up a basic development environment. So after you finish your questions, you are going to want to pull the Docker images You are going to want to aggregate some stuff, and this is all in the current readmes. And then you are going to want to invoke develop. So let's see what happens if we invoke start. And this is a little fair warning, it's not going to work. So there's an error message here that tells me Docker Compose could not be found in this distro. We recommend to activate the WSL integration in Docker desktop settings. So the fact is, I have not, and you won't see this, but I have not run Docker desktop on this machine. So on the Windows side, we haven't yet started Docker desktop. That's all that's wrong. Seems like it's a big, huge deal. The engine is starting. I see it on another screen right now. I'll wait a moment until Docker engine starts, and it will attach itself to WSL2 because I have the WSL2 integration correctly configured. Still starting. So to get started with this, if you go back to the, while it's still starting here, I'm going to talk about something else. If you go back here to the template, so Doodba copier template, and we look at the README, it is going to tell you some things that you need to do. So before we get going, and this is a Linux system, you're not doing this on, and I'm using a Debian Ubuntu installation. So you're going to have to install pipx, and then you're going to install these non Python really utilities. So pipx install copier, invoke, pre-commit, and then you're going to run this ensure path. This is going to make sure these things are available. There is a place in here you're going to create a virtual environment before you install too much of your Python stuff, so make sure you have a virtual environment set up. This is the killer line right here. The copier utility that you installed from pipx, you're going to copier copy, that's the command for copier copy, GitHub, gh Tecnativa, Doodba copier template, and then you're going to add the path to your personal subproject, which I clearly have made bs-odoo. If you fork your template, you can certainly change this to GitHub, your GitHub name and your repo that you're using. So it says here, copier will ask you a lot of questions, answer them to properly generate the template. Some of those questions are for the not super initiated. Some of those questions are difficult. They relate to how URLs will be designed to be accessible. They relate to some Postgres stuff, which I didn't even put in the list of things that you have to know. So there's some Postgres database stuff that you have to be involved with and understand. There's quite a bit on the traffic proxy and reverse proxy and so forth. And there's also Get and GitLab and some Amazon stuff. If you want to back your deployment up to Amazon, you can certainly do that, AWS, or something that's speaks the AWS S3 type of commands. So they're going to tell you that you need some of that going. So as soon as you get going with that, you can then switch over to using your subproject. So you created your subproject here, then there's a separate bit of documentation that tells you how to get started. Some of these I mentioned already: copier, Doodba, Docker Compose, Get. Some of these other to invoke, Odoo, of course, yay, I like that. Python, and some other tools. They're telling you here, now this is a little bit all over the map and I don't love it, but they say environments and then they go right into the development environment. There's no way to close this down. What are the other environments? I think if we scroll down far enough, we'll find not much, by the way, on. So testing is another environment, and production should be somewhere in there. I don't know, but no. So development, testing, and production are the three environments that they're really talking about. So let's open that up. There, development, production, testing. All right. So the development environment is going to use Mailhog to intercept mail, and we talked about that already. It's going to you're going to have an isolated network. It's going to use the debugger here, this Python debugger. It's going to offer some things on Postgres, some web tools to let you look around at what's going on behind the scenes in the database. Production is going to give you some stuff to help you deploy your production instance, and testing, of course, is going to be quite similar to production, so you'll deploy your instance in a public-facing way. Then they go into some details on Visual Studio Code integration, about the debugger and so on, but the big thing about the way this works is that you will end up with a, let's go back to Visual Studio Code here, you will end up with a workspace file here, doodba.bs-odoo.code-workspace. So the .code-workspace extension is something that VS Code recognizes, and this is what you're seeing here is my, my workspace that I loaded. It's up here. And you can see there's some cool buttons at the bottom for starting, stopping, restarting, and so on. So now that I've got all that working and I've got Docker Engine working, let's try starting Odoo, which is going to run that invoke task to start Odoo. You can see here the containers are starting, quite a few containers. Let's go back to the terminal. There we go. And let's do Docker PS. And I wish I had a way to make that a little smaller. Oops. Let's find my terminal again. So here Docker should be, the Docker containers look to be started. Mailhog, we've got all sorts of containers running here, including Odoo, the actual Odoo. So let's go back to the browser and let's see if Odoo actually started. So we've got unable to connect on that one. There's Mailhog. There is going to be our actual Odoo. There we go, and we're still signed in. And here we have, I think, the debugger. And 17081, this is the Postgres tool, and I think that's what we're going to show. So something, and they mention this, but if you look, the port is 17069. I chose, in this example, I chose to install Odoo 17. So that's why we have a 17069. You can run in parallel version 16, 15, 14, and so on. Now you got to get pretty good at this before you do that. So you'll see this Mailhog is also on 17025. So if you wanted to look at your Mailhog for your version 16, which could be running concurrently, you would just change to port 16. Same thing with the WDB debugger. This is your port 17 prefix for 984. So add the major version of Odoo plus 984 and you end up with your debugger. So if you want to see more about what Odoo does, you certainly can, look, I installed the lunch one. You certainly can dig around whether you do this yourself or look at Odoo in general. All right, so back to the Visual Studio Code. So you do see you have some ability here to install modules. These are all invoke list. So install and uninstall modules, that's all this button, install module, all that button is doing is calling invoke install. Stop Odoo is calling invoke install for stop. Invoke stop. Restart, you'll find every one of these somewhere in here for these buttons. They're just convenient and fast. So I hope that's enough. Let's see, what do we got? 35 minutes? That's perfect. I hope this is enough to get you started, and I hope it's informative. I hope to make some more videos on this as I go down my path of installing Odoo. Mostly this is intended to start a conversation. Please do comment down in the comments, of course, if you have questions about this or if you have some points that I've gotten wrong. I am new to this, so give me a break. Cut me some slack. I'm just trying to get some information out there. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope your Odoo path goes really smoothly for you.